All right, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for coming. This is our first of what's going to be many interviews with political candidates over the next month or so. So what we're going to do today, we have Mike Nickerson, right? So he is the Democratic candidate for State Senate in Legislative District 17. He is going to face off with Justine Wadzak, the Republican candidate. We invited her to participate, but she declined. So what we're going to do is we're going to have Mr. Nickerson introduce himself, tell a little bit about himself. We'll ask him some questions, and then we're going to open it up to questions from you all. We're going to keep you all muted for the time being. Well, actually throughout, sorry. But you can just write your questions in the chat, and then Sarah will pass them over to me. And so let's get started. All right, Mr. Nickerson, could you please tell us a little bit about yourself?
Okay, I'm Mike Nickerson, and as you mentioned, I'm running for LD 17 State Senate. Throughout my life, my purpose has been to bring diverse people together and then bring them together to work cooperatively so our communities and our world would be better. That's what a pastor does. He brings a lot of different people, but we work together for a goal. I've done this as a pastor of small churches. I've had churches less than 50 members. I've had churches over 1,000 members. Also, I've done it as a new church developer in Arizona and Southern Nevada, as president of a theological school, a graduate theological school. Beyond my profession, I've also worked together with people to bring solutions by volunteering. I was part of the Dayton Peace Accords Committee, South Mountain Park Master Plan Community, Sundance Central Committee, Arizona Governor's Task Force on Values and Education, just to name a few. That's kind of my background. I'm running for Senate because I think my skills are needed in the Senate right now because it's highly dysfunctional. And I think that's dysfunction is because of three things. It's lack of integrity, partisanship, and money. Lack of integrity. The governor's task force that I was on was 16 people. We met in 89 and 90 in Phoenix. And on that task force, we came out with what values should be taught in education in our public schools. And the number one value was integrity and honesty. And we've lost a lot of that. I mean, lack of integrity, I think, has poisoned our politics. I know some people now are very cynical and say all politicians lie. I'm a politician that won't. I mean, I'm not going to lose my integrity just to win an election. It's just not worth it. But we do need to have people speak what they really believe, not what they think will get the most votes. Second, the partisanship. Everybody knows we're hugely polarized. And as such, we need to find ways to get together. It has to end so that legislators can put Arizona citizens first rather than their own political careers. That only happens when we respect one another and we seek together to have a prosperous future. I think both of those issues, lack of integrity and partisanship, are because of money. Money plays far too big a role in politics today. And the people who raise the most money seem to be the ones who make the most outrageous statements. It's a big problem. And that's why I'm running as a clean candidate. I can explain more if people want to know about clean candidates, but I cannot take any PAC money, and individuals can only give me $180. I'll leave it at that right now. If somebody wants more about it. And it's been since 1998. And that's my intro.
All right, just to interject, when you say you're a clean candidate, you mean Clean Elections Commission candidate?
Correct.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay. All right. So could you tell us a little about your education as well?
Okay. I was public school educated and then went to Michigan State University. For my bachelor's, I graduated magna cum laude from the Honors College. Went to United Theological Seminary, got a Master's of Divinity degree. That's a 3-year professional degree. And then later on, I went back to school, got a master's in urban planning from Miami University, and then a PhD in historical geography from Syracuse University. And that's the historical geography degree has really given me a lot of perspective of where our history is politically and where we are different today and where we're the same as we were, say, in the 1850s. So that's kind of my quick educational profile.
Could you give us, this is maybe an impossible question, but with your doctorate, could you give us like a sentence or two about what you focused on?
Well, being religious, I focused on how different denominations started churches. I took 6 denominations and looked at upstate New York between 1790 and 1810, the early federal period, as it's called. And each denomination had a different geographic strategy as how they started churches. And so that's what I looked at.
Great, thank you. I know that can be difficult to.
Yeah, I mean, it's,
years of work.
it only
Yeah.
took 450 pages to
Sure.
explain it.
Sure. And so how long have you lived in LD 17?
I lived here for 2 years.
Okay. And you were coming from where 2 years ago?
Most immediately from Billings, Montana. I'm a United Methodist minister, so I've been pushed all around basically the West. I've also had pastorates in Washington State and Colorado, as well as in Arizona.
Okay. All right. Getting into the issues, if you are elected, we have a very almost perfectly divided legislature right now, so it can go one way or the other by the election. And we have, one of the most important issues people are talking about in the country is abortion. And with the Supreme Court overturning Roe v. Wade, that now gives tremendous power to state legislatures to pass laws relating to abortion. So what kind of laws would you like to see passed regarding abortion?
I'd like to see what Colorado did, which is they passed a law which said that no municipality nor county nor any entity in the state can be passing laws that are restrictive of women's reproductive rights. And I come to that, it's a much more complex issue. And I wrote an article about 2.5 weeks ago in the Daily Star. You probably read it. About the complexity that the pro-life, pro-choice, it's just not that easy. Sometimes having an abortion is pro-life if it saves the woman's life. Sometimes if persons really believe that abortion is all wrong, even if their doctor says they should have an abortion for their own safety, it's their choice. So that becomes a pro-choice. So the labels are just so bad. And legislatures are notorious for getting bad laws in this area. I mean, most of the laws that are being passed right now have no exceptions for the rape, incest, or even the mother's health. If you have an ectopic pregnancy or a molar pregnancy, you need to have an abortion or you die. I mean, that's the question. And when there is no exceptions, then the police come in and they can arrest the doctor and arrest you if you're the woman. That just doesn't make any sense.
Just to give you a hypothetical, let's say that there's a 25-year-old woman who gets pregnant and she just does not want to be pregnant. She doesn't want to have a child. Should she be able to have an abortion?
I think legally, yes. Now I come to this having counseled a lot of people about having abortions. And I really haven't counseled anybody who just says, oh, I don't feel like it right now. It's a pretty heart-wrenching decision, one that people carry for them. But yes, even in that case, because I don't think the legislature should be defining what is correct and safe medical practice and what isn't safe medical practice. And that's what they're doing when they pass these laws.
So it should be legal.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, great. And then we have another thing that's on our readers' minds is school funding. And so the state of Arizona greatly expanded the voucher program. Could you give us your take on that and what you'd like to see the legislature do?
Yes, that is my number one issue, by the way. We've underfunded our schools for 2 decades at least. And now the effects of that underfunding have left schools in not good shape, have meant that many of our teachers who get paid 50th or 49th, depending on whose statistics you want to talk about, average salary in the United States, we've lost them. That's why we have a teacher shortage, because we don't fund. I mean, teachers can't raise their families on their salaries. They have to get a different salary or they go somewhere else. I have a friend who went to Pennsylvania, made $25,000 more, and she was only making $50,000, $55,000 here. That's almost a 50% increase for doing the same job. We need to increase the funding for public education. But what's happened is, I think it's been a self-fulfilling prophecy and maybe even a plan. I hate to be into, I think it's been planned all along that we underfund the schools long enough, they won't perform as well, and then we'll just give the money to private schools, privileged private academies, religious schools, and others. And that's really a giveaway to rich people, because most of us can't afford $15,000 to $30,000, which is the tuition for a private school. But gee, if you can afford part of that, the state's going to give you $7,000. That doesn't make any sense. And it's going to drain away a lot of our funding when we're already underfunding. So I'm very much against the vouchers that passed, the basically universal voucher that they called. And I would encourage everyone. I'm writing an article for the Star right now, so you'll see it in a couple of days. I'd encourage everyone to sign the petition for the referendum. We need 118,000 votes to get it on the ballot, and then to stop the vouchers from going into effect until the people have a right to vote on them. And so I would recommend they do that. I could go on and on about this, but I think that probably covers a lot of what you were asking. If you want more follow-up, that's fine.
Everything that I'm asking you is a hour's worth of conversation.
Exactly. And that's, as I said before we started, I'm used to 30 minutes all by myself as a pastor. And so this is hard, but I'm learning.
All right. So we also have another hugely important issue is water. Yep. The Colorado River is running low. Lake Mead, Lake Powell running really low. We have negotiations going on between the states about how to deal with this. What do you think that the legislature should do with regard to water?
First of all, we need to work on conservation. That bill that passed last time saying, 20 years from now, we might get desalinization, or I think it's really crazy trying to get Mississippi River water, but that's me. We have to start conserving our water. Now, 70% of our water is used by agriculture. And we need to protect our farmers. And I think we can do that and conserve a lot of water by changing irrigation systems and changing crops. Changing irrigation systems or changing crops is going to cost farmers a lot of money. And I think the state should be part of helping them do that with some subsidies, quite frankly, and also enhancing our extension services out of the University of Arizona. Farmers count on the extension service. They trust it. And if the extension service can bring ideas about different watering practices like they do in Israel. Israel is able to water the same crops using 1/8 to 1/10 the amount of water we use in our present systems. On top of that, we have to have a comprehensive plan that not only covers surface water, but groundwater. Groundwater is right now mostly unregulated. There are 3 groundwater districts in the state. We need to have a statewide plan. I mean, right now, for example, a Saudi company is pumping out huge amounts of groundwater for free and growing alfalfa. This is happening southeast of Vail. We can't go on doing that. Plus, and I know this is not real popular, but couldn't golf courses use a little less and be asked to only use gray water instead of fresh water? And many golf courses already do that. But that ought to be something that the legislature works on, because that would save us money and save us water. Certainly, long term, we have to find better sources, because we're probably not going to get more water from the Colorado River because of climate change. You know, and we're getting a good monsoon right now, and we did last year, so it doesn't feel like it. But where it counts, quite frankly, is in Colorado, where their snowfall has been less and less every year. And that's where we get our Colorado River water. They need to have better snowfall, and that only happens if we slow down climate change. And so that's also an issue the legislature needs to deal with. How do we put less carbon in the atmosphere and help? And of course, that's not an Arizona issue, that's a world issue, but we need to do our part. And I could go on, but
and it just one of a reader brought up one other issue which related to this is, what about, should the legislature try to limit growth in Arizona?
Yes, but in a very careful way, because when you start doing that, there's a lot of money involved. Back to the money, and we have to be careful not to allow some kind of communities to grow and others not. Specifically, do we only have wealthy communities grow and there's no housing for middle income people? I could see that happening if we aren't careful of how we restrict our growth. I'm not a believer that we just stop our growth. Growth is what will energize our economy, along with good education. I have to put that plug in. But there are also ways in which we could expect new developments to be much more conserving of water than they are right now. And that could be put into any new laws. Growth, for the most part, the zoning and all is still a local issue. And the legislature can do some things, but there's also local governments that each of them need to think about how to best grow and conserve water.
We have yes, and we have another question here, and we don't want to go too long, but we have just a couple more.
Sure.
So what about voting rights? We have our kind of slate of the people who are going to be in charge from kind of the executive branch of the state government are saying that the election was stolen in 2020 and all of that. And they're also at the state legislature last session, they're pushing efforts to limit, to change, to restrict voting rights. What do you think should be done about that?
We should not restrict the voting rights. It's interesting because in 1998, the mail-in ballots were passed by a Republican legislature, and they wanted mail-in ballots because they thought they would get older people to vote more often. Now they're not seeing that that's a political advantage, and they're changing that and trying to restrict our mail-in ballots. Mail-in ballots have proven to be the most secure, and they get the most voter participation. Just look at what Colorado and Washington State have done. You only vote by mail there, period. I mean, you can drop it into your drop box rather than mail it in, but all ballots are mailed out, and they've had very secure elections. I would move in that direction. I also think that one of the laws passed has to be repealed, which is it gives county recorders the right to take somebody off the list that they think might not qualify without any guidelines. That means that if you've got a very partisan person, either a Democrat or a Republican in the recorder's office, they could just look at all of the other parties' registrants and say, I don't think that they're right. And if the county recorder says that with this law that's just passed, then the person, it's the responsibility of the person to prove that they are. And so it allows for a huge amount of potential discrimination, which we can't have. The idea that the election was stolen is a lie. Over 60 court cases say that. Over many audits say that. I mean, they audited the Georgia election by hand 3 times, and it still came out the same way. And of course, it was our state Senate who spent over $5 million of taxpayer money to do an audit. Now, it wasn't all the Senate's money. Part of that was paid for by Maricopa County trying to defend itself. But over $5 million of taxpayer money was spent on an audit that showed Joe Biden got 360 more votes than was counted. That is reprehensible when we're trying to use our money wisely. That is just a waste of taxpayers' money. And it appears that for partisan reasons, the legislators who wanted to do that decided that they would do it regardless of what happened, because it wasn't their money, it was our money.
Mhm.
It was easy to pass it because they didn't have to pay for it.
So yet another important issue that is maybe more tragic than any other stuff we've talked about. We have gun violence, we have mass shootings, and Arizona has, more, like, liberal is the word, but I mean more not restrictive laws than a lot of other states. And if you were elected to the state legislature, what do you think Arizona's laws should look like, and what would you do to, quell mass shootings and gun violence?
Well, first of all, you need to know I'm a gun owner. I have been I've been since 16 years old, and I still have the gun that I bought when I was 16, which is a Remington 58 12-gauge shotgun. It only holds 3 shots in the magazine. And the reason for that is then and for the last half century, the federal government has not allowed you to shoot ducks or other waterfowl if you have a gun that has more than 3 shots in its magazine. However, if the gun is designed to shoot people, you can have as many shots in your magazine as you want. So that's one thing. Another is this legislature has gone far too far in the wrong direction. They passed the bill that took the state sales tax off of guns. So that means we have to pay sales tax on our food, but we don't have to pay it on our guns. That doesn't make any sense. That just doesn't make any sense. It's a giveaway to the gun lobby. So like I say, we have to do that. I would be in favor, but it isn't going to happen because it really is a federal issue. I would like the federal government to reinstate the assault weapons ban. We had it for 10 years, and the year that it was taken off, mass shootings increased 256%, and they've gone up ever since. Assault weapons are made for one thing and one thing only. That's to kill other people. I mean, that's what they're for. That's what they were designed to do. They were designed to do it the most effective way possible. And there is no sportsman who would ever use an assault weapon to go hunt deer or bear or anything else. It's not sport. I mean, and so those are 2 things. Assault weapons and magazines need to be controlled. But I think people should be able to own their firearms, responsible people. I do believe that we should have background checks, especially for persons who have been convicted or have protective orders on domestic violence. Many of our gun deaths are from domestic partners, and there could be a way in which we could alleviate a lot of that. We're not going to stop it, I'm obviously, I know that, but that could be helped.
And I feel like we should wrap this up. So is there another issue that we haven't touched on that you think is important, or anything you would like to add?
Actually, you haven't seen my card, but my card has those issues that you've asked me about. I mean, education, right on down. I mean, we haven't really talked about healthcare other than reproductive care. And Arizona needs to increase its access program so that every person in Arizona has quality health care. We don't have that for everyone, and that should be something we do. And it's not a question of money. We've got the money, and it wouldn't be that much more expensive. But we need to do better health care. One other thing that is kind of a little one of mine is we need to do more solar energy. We're Arizona. We got lots of sun. And I would be in favor of net metering, which I know public utilities are going to raise, issue with that. I believe, they have the right to have a $20 or $25 extra fee for the infrastructure if they need to. But the reason they don't like rooftop solar is because it's not part of their installed base, and they get rate increases dependent upon their installed base. Now, this is corporate commission issues, and I'm not sure how much the legislature can push into that, because the Corporation Commission is a separate constitutional Arizona constitutional body in our state. So, but I would be favorable toward some sort of net metering, which would allow a lot of people to put solar on their roofs, and we could be an exporter of energy by doing that, rather than importing it as we have now. So that would be another issue, but it's far down the list compared to those other issues you've mentioned.
Okay, let me just check here. I think, yeah, all right. I think we should wrap it up here. Okay, great. Doesn't look like there's many more questions. Obviously, there's many more things to touch on, but
of course, I mean but I think the thing I would say is I have stances on all these things, but I'm not a no compromise person. I think that's important, that we understand that politics is about compromise. And when you bring people together, you find the best solution for the whole group, not just one group. And so I can work with people who are Democrat or Republican, it doesn't matter, in the legislature, as long as we're seeking to solve issues that are facing Arizona's citizens and not trying to score political points. So I can work with people. I've done it all my life. That's what I would say is most important for people to understand. It's I have very strong opinions on some things, but I don't expect everybody in the world to have the same opinions. But I do expect that we will work together for the best for our state.
okay. All right, wonderful. Thank you so much. And this is, we're going to wrap it up here. This is Mike Nickerson. He is the Democratic candidate for State Senate in Legislative District 17. So thank you very much for sharing your thoughts with us. And thank you to everybody who showed up. And we are going to have.
I guess can I have one more thing?
Sure.
I realized that when I was saying I can work with everyone, people probably should know that I started out as a Republican, and that I actually worked for a Republican congressman as an intern, as a congressional intern in Washington, D.C. And I've always been strong on civil rights. He was strong on civil rights. I worked for George Romney because he was strong on civil rights. And that's kind of the issue that has brought me from one side to the other.
Okay.
And we didn't talk much about civil rights. And I'm talking about all sorts of human rights, not just black and white. but that too, of course.
Yeah, and you have a lot more to say.
Oh, yeah.
And I would like to, I'm going to invite all the candidates we talk to. If you want to, keep writing the guest opinions. If there's an issue that you didn't get out right here and you really want to flesh out, feel free to submit a guest opinion to the Star.
Well, like I say, you'll have one on education funding in a couple of days.
Yeah, sure. Looking forward to it.
Thank you, Kurt. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. And I just want to let everybody know that we are continuing today. At 1 o'clock, we're going to have Brian Radford. He is one of the Democratic candidates for the State House in Legislative District 17. And at 4 o'clock, we're going to have Democratic candidates Nancy Gutierrez and Chris Mathis and Republican candidate Linda Evans. They are all running for the State House in Legislative District 18. So with that, we are going to wrap it up. Thank you to everybody. And hopefully we'll see some of you all later on today.